a journey. We are all traveling. Kure kwanda babai koi koi koi. Here I have been traveling. Life is a journey. We are still traveling. Kure kwandi koi dai koi koi. We are all still traveling. Kanango mayorirana so terera iwe. Voda izirango menna so pembera. Ubenye wudu kudu kumwanawe. Break a leg my friend. Kanango mayorirana so terera. Kanango mayorirana so terera iwe. Voda izirango menna so pembera. Ubenye wudu kudu kumwanawe. Break a leg, my friend. Kanango mayorira na so terera. Life is a journey. Yeah, we are all traveling. Kure kwanda babai koi koi koi. Here I have been traveling. Oh, life is a journey. We are still traveling. Kure kwatino and I go, yeah, we are all still traveling. Kanango mayorira na so terera iwe. Voda izirango menna so pembera iwe. Upenye wudo kudu kumwanawe. Break a leg, my friend. Kanango mayorira na so terera iwe. Kanango mayorira na so terera iwe. Oda izirango menna so pembera. Ubenye wudu kudu kumwanawe. Break a leg, my friend. Kanango mayorira na so terera iwe. I have been traveling. We're still all traveling. Yes, I have been traveling, 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 traveling,
My white sheets tend to blue. Lonely nights, all I miss is you. I can't text a message. My fingers are freezing now. I'm afraid I won't survive. I'm getting too terrified. The snow is falling down, and I feel too much cold in me. I feel too much cold in me. I feel too much cold in me. I'm up to your door, and I'm looking at your eyes. Look at the sun going down, autumn leaves falling down. The Game of Thrones, winter is calling now. This cold might freeze my heart. Tell me it's gonna be there by my side when the snow falls around ever cold. Nobody else but you. Nobody else but you. Nobody else but you. I'm up to your door, and I'm looking at your eyes. Too much gold for me. much golden meat. I'm halfway to your door, and looking at your heart. I feel too much golden meat. Right through too much golden.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to everybody who has arrived here tonight in person, and welcome to everybody patching in online. It's good to have you involved in the conversation as much as it's remote. It is awesome to have you watching and engaging, and please get your questions ready because we've got a team who are going to be patching those questions through to me. We do have a prize, which is a bottle of this sumptuous Sydney Back brandy, which will be we will give to somebody, not Charles. Maybe Charles. We'll see. But and we're going to have the best comment or the best question of the evening, which we have a team of actuaries who are sitting in the next room who are going to be sifting through all the comments, watching you guys through one-way glass over here, watching the behavior and the engagement, and we will assess by the end of the evening who is the winner of this very, very valuable prize tonight. So welcome everybody. My name is Fred Roed. I'm very, very excited to be having this conversation because I think it is an extremely pertinent one, a very relevant one, one that is now even more relevant given the news that we do not have to wear masks. Whoop! Yes! So I'm very happy about that. Could you tell? I was suggesting a mask burning after this. So let's consider that as part of the thing. But anyway, those of you who maybe are new to Heavy Chef and who are patching in online, Heavy Chef is a learning platform for entrepreneurs. Our core belief is that entrepreneurs can change the world for the better. And so our mission is really to inspire as many entrepreneurs to start projects and then empower them to succeed through essentially bite-sized learning. And that's really our hypothesis. It's our mission. It's the project at hand. And if you have not yet done so, please go and check out heavychef.com and sign up for the learning platform. There's a whole host of benefits. And in a year since we launched, we have, I think we've created well over 1,000 learning bite videos on topics ranging from starting a business to scaling a business to selling a business and everything in between. And so we really are working hard on scaling that up and providing as much value to the entrepreneurs that we serve. So very quickly, I just want to mention that, well, first of all, let me just say events are really an important part of it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it in due course because, I mean, it's now it's two and a half years, almost 2 years and a few months since lockdown. I mean, we were having events across the road here in Discovery of like 600 people, where we were sold out within hours of sending out the invite. And we now have gotten to a post-pandemic world where I think we want to start making sense of what do gatherings mean, and I'll talk a little bit to that with our two guests tonight, Selebogo and Paul, just about why we should actually be meeting in person as opposed to through a screen. And no offense to those of you who are patching in, we love you. However, there is a case in this remote world for us to be connecting in person, and why? Why is that important? So that's one of the questions we're going to ask. With that in mind, we're hosting a couple of events coming up. In July, financial management with Uwais Asmal and Andrea Klassen on financial management for small business and startups. And in August, back here in Workshop 17 in Sandton, we're going to be having Nalisha Pile from Kudu, which is just an incredible startup that's just doing amazing things. They've grown from a tiny team to over 65 in just a year and a half, selling wares online, gaming wares online, and just the lessons that she's learned, as well as Warwick Keurns, who we're just a huge fan of in Saka Academy, e-commerce training academy, doing some incredible work. So Warwick, we see you and we support you, and we're looking forward to hosting you on stage. So before we begin the conversation, I just want to say a massive thank you to our partners. From the beginning, we've had support from just some amazing organizations, including PayFast and Zero, who have really aligned with our vision for empowering entrepreneurs in South Africa, as well as Workshop 17. Paul, we see you and your amazing team, which is just, by the way, we just need to please give Paul and his team a bit of a rousing round of applause for winning the Global Startup Awards Africa Division Best Co-working Space Award. So, I mean, that's now on a very crowded shelf of award trophies for best this and that and whatnot. So, Workshop 17 has been cleaning up. As well as Ex-Nilo, Capitalize, Whipping the Cat, Digital Planet, HP Store, Baxberg. Some of you guys have been tucking into this amazing Merlot, which is pretty good, right? I heard some comments. I think it's one of the best red wines, certainly, that's in the country. Surf Fruit, Good Leaf, Parcel Ninja, Creed Living, Roxy and the Crew, just an amazing company. Black Magic, these technical Black Maverick. Sorry, I keep on saying Black Magic. Black Magic is the tool that Black Maverick used to do all the technical wizardry behind the scenes. But Massimo and the Crew just doing amazing work. So thank you guys. Isizayo in Cape Town, Eclipse Communication, just also a really, really great PR company. And then and I think I just want to say thank you to you guys as well for coming out. Welcome back to the real world, for getting back into the wild, and thanks to our supporters online who have supported us throughout all of our various adventures with all the amazing entrepreneurs that we've been featuring. So tonight, the context is really about the new workplace. And what does it mean? And I'm really looking forward to this conversation, because particularly in light the recent announcement of a maskless society, we're back, and we can see each other again, which is just incredible. And to be able to I suppose regain a bit of a semblance of normalcy is just it's almost confusing. I don't know if anyone follows the comedian, what's his name, the feeling good, feeling positive guy, Skulk the Sadenote, and he posted something today. But you know what? Like, we had this announcement last night, and there was no family meeting. There was no Cyril on YouTube with thousands of people. There was just this quiet little announcement. It's like, hey guys, sorry for the last 2.5 years, but everything is back to normal. It's like, what? Okay, so what does that mean? So it means that tonight we have an important conversation. So first of all, welcome Selebogo, welcome Paul onto the Heavy Chef stage. That's your cue, guys. And for those of you online, you can click your mouses and clink your glasses and comment on YouTube. So before I start, I just also want to say a big thank you to the Heavy Chef team, Yolandi, Louis, Mo, Juja, Bronwyn, Randall, Sia, and am I forgetting anybody? Justin, come on. and yeah, it's just such an amazing honor to work with you guys, and what a joy, what a privilege to be able to do this work. So guys, how are you? How's everything? Level, how's everything going?
Better than usual.
That was a deep sigh.
I've seen some really tough times, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be here. I just drove in from Polokwane now, and I was looking forward to tonight. I mean, it's been a while.
We're going to get into a little bit about those tough times, if we may. Paul, how are you, sir, off the back of all these accolades?
Excited for the time that we're in. It plays into our hands. Still making sense of it, but also trying to be a little bit ahead of it and creating the future.
I want to ask, before we kind of get into the weeds, and I'm going to take some questions from the audience and from the online audience. Would you mind? Because, I mean, I'm not going to go through your bio and what you guys do because there's a lot. But maybe if you could just define what does a general workday look like for the founder of People's Fund, the hookup dinners, Lifesgud, and I mean, what do you do on a day-to-day basis, Level?
I'm a salesman. I'm always selling ideas. I'm either selling them to entrepreneurs to buy into what we're trying to do in terms of assisting them. And if it's not them, then it's decision makers. And the reason decision makers are important in all of this is that we're in the entrepreneurship development space. So we try and assist entrepreneurs to move forward in three spheres. One is in education. So we do a lot of training and development, CETA accredited, that type of stuff. As well as enterprise development. And then there's the funding element. We try and use communities and crowds to make sure that they fund each other. So we create crowdfunding platforms and all sorts of things that happen on the ground, including stock files. And then the one that I really get excited about is market access linkages. I think that's the next frontier in terms of what we are doing, and where we really need to put probably like 90% of our focus. A lot of entrepreneurs are creating a lot of beautiful things out there, but they're very much disconnected and disenfranchised. And a big challenge for them is how to sell, how to access the right people, the right audience in order from who to sell to. So I'm constantly finding myself on the road. I mean, I literally live on the road, just trying to make sure that these ideas get across the line.
And again, we're going to go into a little bit of detail about what that means and some of the solutions that you're looking at. Paul, your daily work life, what does it entail?
My day starts with a run usually, which keeps my mind fit. So it's not only the body, but it's really getting me in a good space. Taking my stepson to school, but then going online, making sure that every question that's there with any of the teams I answer so that they can get on with the day. So a lot of it, what I do is at the background. Actually, I strive to be invisible. I'm not succeeding very well tonight. But the whole idea about Workshop 17, my background, as you know, is education and learning and development. And it's really about striving to create an environment where people can strive, where every day something exciting happens, and where every day they feel like I've learned something. And as a consultant, you're always in interaction with your clients. But at Workshop 17, I want it to happen without me being present. And that is really why I invested in Workshop 17, and Mark and I created this environment for others to thrive.
And it's, you are failing at staying in the background, because having been on all these stages, winning all kinds of awards for the great work you're doing, it certainly speaks to, I think, the new workplace and what that could look like and what it's starting to evolve into. So I want to then, in South Africa, it's not the same as, say, for example, San Francisco or New York or London, or where where you have a very clean synergy with the co-working environment and remote and so on and so forth, where you have the likes of WeWork and so on and so forth. That's just, blooming all over the show. So, I mean, Lebo, let's start there in terms of, can we talk about the daily life? You spoke about Polokwane and what is the daily life for entrepreneurs certainly in disconnected regions, in the outlying areas and so on?
It's a bit challenging. I mean, there's three tiers to entrepreneurs. There's the outliers who make magic happen regardless of where they are. These are the guys I often say about them that they literally draw water out of stones. They do magic, doesn't matter the environment. And then there's a smaller group, and that group are creators. They're making products, they're doing amazing things, and they're getting out of the township and in the rural areas trying to find spaces that can connect them. So spaces like Workshop 17 as an example, right? So they come out of townships, they travel out into these spaces. And then there's the majority. The majority are in the services economy, and they're hustling. They're just trying to survive on a daily basis. And they've got multiple pressures, and they lack a lot of things. They lack access to resources, access to a lot of things like that just make the life of an entrepreneur quite easy. The things that we take for granted out in urban spaces, like access to Wi-Fi, being able to call a client without noise around you. Sometimes you're in a taxi and a client calls and you must sound like you're in an office. There's a lot of that, and that is pretty much their daily life. They are trying to sell, but it comes from a hustling place and not from a building place, and that's the gap that needs to be closed.
So that certainly aligns with one of the people that we featured on the learning platform is Jessica from Yebofresh, and she was talking about her experience working in the townships and so on, that we have these statistics that are coming out that are relatively scary, right? The 65% of the youth 18 to 24 years old are unemployed, but the reality is they're not unemployed, and doing nothing. They're not standing on street corners and looking at each other. They're as in Herwith, they're hustling. They're making, they're creating, they're sharing, they're interacting, engaging, trying to sell whatever they can, right? So there's a lot of activity, but it's informal, right?
Yeah, it's informal. It's hard to measure, and up until you are part of that culture, you won't see it. It's invisible. But it's also very exciting. I see a lot of entrepreneurs, and maybe it's because I come from that environment. My own background is in the informal space. I used to sell a lot on the streets, and I mean, one of the ventures that I tried to venture into was in recycling, plastic recycling. And I found myself in the dumps, and up until I got into those spaces, I never realized that people were making so much money looking so dirty every day, and we passed them on the road, right? We just look at them and we're like, ooh, these guys, they're going to cause accidents some days. But when you get to the dumping sites, you start realizing just how big the economy is there and the value chain. I mean, the spaces where it's happening to, we're selling into Zimbabwe. Once the granules were processed in the local factories. And there's a big market outside of South Africa for this. But once you try and get into certain spaces, you start realizing just how exciting they are, but they're still very informal, and I think they do need a lot of assistance just in terms of formalizing and assisting them. Sometimes it's not about formalizing, but assisting them to do things better.
So, I mean, that certainly is exciting. I mean, and we don't normally see that or talk about that, but it's happening, right? And I concur with the fact that it's difficult to measure. I mean, part of the remit of Heavy Chef, certainly the Heavy Chef Foundation, which Louis runs, is about trying to measure the learning habits and how these rhythms and routines of entrepreneurs across all the different tiers is eventuating, and it's very difficult to do that. But just talking about exciting, I mean, Paul, there's on the other end of the scale, I suppose, there is this confluence of now with co-working and co-working spaces, and I suppose the concept that you've designed is now starting to bloom, right? So can you maybe share with us a little bit about what's happening on the other end of the scale, new locations, new regions, and so on and so forth?
Maybe before I do, I can link to stay in the scale, if you want to call it a scale. I do think it's really important that we connect communities. That's what Workshop 17 is about. And it shouldn't be the community that's in Sandton connecting to Rosebank. It should also be the community in Sandton connecting to Alex, connecting to Diepsloot, connecting to Soweto. So something we don't talk about so much, but we're very passionate about is collaborating with those areas. It's not easy for us to just go and open a Workshop 17 in Soweto or in Diepsloot and thinking it will work, because it won't. It needs so much more to bridge the divides that are there. So we work with Africa Tikkun and Riza Babiele to support a hub in Diepsloot. We're opening one in Soweto, in Mamponya Mall, hopefully still this year, which is a partnership, because it's not only creating the space, it's really also activating, supporting the work that Lebo is doing. But for us to connect those economies and those entrepreneurs with the entrepreneurs in Sandton and Rosebank and in the waterfront, and just creating access to market, access to opportunities, giving them a hassle-free, a friction-free environment to work in without, and being professional, having a client meeting in Sandton instead of coming in a taxi. You know?
And what are the challenges to making that happen?
It doesn't really work economically. So it needs support economically, because otherwise the threshold becomes too big. So we want to create an aspirational space, but accessible for everyone. So that's why we work with partners. It also needs the active support to guide and support the entrepreneurs and to actually connect that. And it needs treating them as equals. And I think that's what we always forget. Just making them feel at home. And when I meet anyone, whether it's a CEO or whether it's a hustling entrepreneur, they're the same people. It's the same needs, the same conversations. And I think sometimes we forget that we don't have to bring too much, but we just listen and engage and then work together.
So, I mean, just to jump on that theme and dig a little bit deeper, I mean, Lebo, in your view, can you define, just in your experience, what's the biggest challenge facing entrepreneurs in these peri-urban areas?
Oof.
Putting you on the spot, but I want to try and kind of get to the nub of it.
Yeah, I think it's access. If I just take a step back and look at our own journey when we started as that, our partnership with Workshop 17, and back then it was called Open, we started out in Braamfontein, and this was after attending a lot of heavy chef events. And when we got into Maboneng and got into that type of space, it gave us credibility immediately. It gave us a particular edge and image in society. And all of a sudden, corporates were interested in what we're doing at a different scale. And it made us money. So credibility just by having access to resources is a big thing that's often overlooked. We think entrepreneurs need money or funding and stuff like that. And of course they need those things. But the starting point is just access to resources, to give them dignity, to trade, to have self-respect, that they struggle with something as simple as having a coffee machine in the spaces that they're in. So how do you attract a quality client if you're not able to even give them, serve them in a dignified way? So you're not able to make money because you are also questioning yourself as to whether you are worthy of this. So I think a lot of it is just about overcoming personal challenges, and that has to do with the spaces and the environment that they find themselves in. And I must also say that the picture is changing, albeit changing a bit slowly. It should have accelerated. I mean, when you look at what COVID did, it digitized a lot of the world. It helped a lot of entrepreneurs to start looking at digital platforms in terms of how they can do things better. But I think we're slow. Everybody's going back to look. They're looking at the old normal and hoping that they can find themselves back in the way that things used to be. And it's not quite that way. There's an opportunity into the future for them to access resources differently. It should be cheaper to access the internet, but little things like that. Just having access to resources, Wi-Fi, spaces, a space from where to trade, a space from where to connect with your clients, a space that gives you dignity. There's a lot of that is missing.
Do you want to add to that?
I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, to take away all those elements and what I say, an aspirational place, an accessible place, something that you feel at home, but also that your clients start trusting you. And I've heard quite a lot of the stories that people say, like, once I'm in a space like Workshop 17, they look at me differently. It shouldn't be. It actually shouldn't be. But if we can help in that way, it helps. And from your earlier question about the scale, we do events like this, but host events like this. We don't actually do it, but we have better people to do it like you. But what happens is it brings people together. And it starts with your first remark. We've gone a little bit lazy through COVID because you can just put on the screen and everything is online.
Not you guys.
Not you. And it's comfortable.
You guys are amazing.
It has this mixed blessing.
Everybody online.
It has this mixed blessing that we have more people probably reaching with the talk, but we have less people together. And that's the mixed blessing. And what Workshop 17 wants to do is to bring people together to create accidental meetings. Because if we think about most important meetings in our lives, or breakthroughs that we had, or a new client that it's often not a planned thing. It's often something that happened by accident. And the shortest way to describe what we're trying to do is to make those accidents happen more. And we do it by having a diversity of people in. So we do events, and we have event spaces to bring the corporates in to do the strategy sessions. While in another room, there is the startups having their first incubator sessions. And they walk out, and they bump into each other in the shared space. And that's where magic happens. And it's something that we can't plan, we can't judge, we can't touch, but it's really bringing people in proximity together, which would usually not be together so easily.
It's a really fascinating topic to me because, I mean, through the learning platform and, trying to educate entrepreneurs, a big part of our research has shown that, it's extremely important for entrepreneurs to learn within groups, be in proximity to each other, because that serendipitous understanding or serendipitous knowledge that occurs when those accidental meetings happen, that's really where often the magic and the gold emerges in the growth of organizations. And so how do we facilitate that? And I think there's a huge opportunity for that because even in the event space, I speak to a bunch of event organizers. Obviously we've Black Maverick and we've got a bunch of teams and peoples that we are engaged with. And it's really tough. I mean, it's tough to figure out and navigate what the next iteration of hosting events. Again, we used to, it was easy. We would have these big events and lots of people and so on and so forth. But now I think it's changed and people expect different things. There's the opportunity of all the folks online, but then also to have these events amplified over time and over the next couple of weeks, for people to sit at their leisure and watch. So there's different ways of engaging and looking at it, right?
Yeah, there's blessings and there's downsides of it. And I think the one thing that you miss is that thing that you didn't think would happen. And I think the great philosopher John Lennon said that life is happening while you're making other plans. So for the people that came out today here, the most important thing might happen tonight is not what we are saying, but what happens unplanned in the sidelines. And innovation always happens in the sidelines. Breakthroughs always happen in the sidelines. And I think making the effort to sometimes come, because things that you didn't think can happen. And we need a reason to come out. But actually, I want to invite people to just come out without any reason and find a reason while you're there.
So, Lebo, I mean, this is your wheelhouse, right? You're a connector. And ever since I first met you, again, I mean, you're an old fan of Heavy Chef, and it's just been such a privilege for Louis and the Heavy Chef team to watch how you've grown in stature and how you're making a mark on the community. But the $1 million question is how do we how do we bring people together, and particularly in this new environment?
I think, just reflecting back on the eventing space, there's a lack of purpose. And because that thing is missing, people are not finding reason to come out. We are reinventing the old instead of tapping into the needs of community. And the only way we can truly do that is by speaking to community. What do you want? Why are you here? And having a data-driven approach to make sure that by the time we plan these events and we plan for people to come out, there's a specific outcome that is designed around it. And just like Paul says, it's going to be accidental in terms of what they're going to find as value. But you've given them a strong enough reason for them to come out. Now, bring it back to what is happening within townships and villages in the spaces that I operate in, and what's happening in urban spaces, and how do we bring these communities closer together. We've got a leverage of technology. If you think about what's currently happening, I think there's also just a language barrier around what is what, right? There's a huge focus, for instance, on fintech. And if you're a fintech startup, hey, you stand a chance. And meanwhile, people don't see that it's just a few that are going to get funded. The rest of them must hustle their way out. It doesn't matter how great your startup looks like, Now, what we consider as e-commerce in the township is just what's up. And yet when we get onto pitching stages, and I judge a lot of pitching competitions, people are pitching about the latest app that they're developing and these hundreds of thousands that they need to develop this thing and make it work. But people have got to save data. People buy data. In fact, we've gotten to the stage where Zimbabwe was a couple of years ago, where they sold data packages according to the platform that you're on. It used to shock me in Zim. I used to make fun of them. And now they're making fun of me. They're like, hey, remember, And what's happening is that if somebody buys Facebook Lite data bundles, as well as WhatsApp data bundles, they're done. And you better make sure that your product is in front of them. And if your product is not in front of them in a way that they can access, so somebody looks at a Facebook status and they're like, how do I get hold of you? Make sure that the thing is linked to your WhatsApp bot. And on WhatsApp, make sure that you've chosen the business page. And they're not going to transact by sending you money through your bank account. They're not going to do any of that. They're just going to either send you an e-wallet, or they're going to say, here's my location, come to me, and then they're going to give you cash. The informal spaces still operate mainly on a cash basis. Now, when you think about that and take a step back and be like, okay, so maybe we are trying to force solutions onto these communities. How do we leverage what's existing? There's so many churches. There's a church at every doorstep in black communities, as an example. At every doorstep, doesn't matter where you look. It could be in a slum, informal sector, in a suburb. There's a church somewhere happening there. If it's not a church, it's a tavern. If it's not a tavern, there's a community hall. All of these spaces exist for particular reasons and purposes. How do we leverage this to make sure that people, how do we reimagine these spaces? Because they're mostly dormant and people are not using them. And therefore, if we are able to engage, for instance, telcos and say, hey, plug these spaces and make sure that they're functional, and let's make sure that the things that are happening in the suburb spaces are feeding into, like, whether we are live streaming or whatever, but let's make sure that people don't have to take a taxi to be able to access these type of opportunities. And all of a sudden, you're building chapters everywhere. And if you had to look at who are the people that used to do this really well, just look at charismatic preachers. Like, they sell nonsense. But look at how they have been able to sway people across the spectrum. And take that, like we must take what works and make sure that we repurpose it for value so that we're contributing in a positive way to communities out there. Then what we are going to see that's going to emerge out of these networking sessions and things that are already happening on the ground is that the diamonds are going to come out. They're going to shine. And as they shine, we know that we're creating a funnel that feeds into spaces like this, because ultimately there must be captains of industry, captains of commerce. And those captains of commerce are not going to go into townships. They're going to remain in comfortable spaces, safe spaces, but you're creating a bridge between the two. And that's really what I just feel like we need to be focusing more on.
Paul, anything to add there? I mean, some of the opportunities I think are amazing, and that's kind of what you alluded to earlier. But I guess, like, how do we practically take advantage of those opportunities?
I think by everyone's playing to their strengths. That's exactly why I'm not doing what Lebo's doing. So I'm listening to him. That's expertise. That is real knowledge. That's real understanding. and we're not using it. We're thinking we need to send something from the affluent to the non-affluent. And actually we must listen and understand and connect. And our role is very simple, and we try to provide a space that they not have to buy data, that there is electricity, that that the connectivity is always up. I think connectivity should be like water. Everyone should have it.
Agreed.
We are just failing many people by not giving it for free.
There's very few people that would disagree with you, I think, except for maybe one or two people at Vodacom, MTN, and Cell C.
Yeah, and our role is then to connect them with our type of clients, with the people in Sandton, in a Rosebank, in everywhere that we are, but also create some spaces where the entrepreneurs that Lebo is speaking about can access our environment and connect with someone.
This is probably an impossible question, Lebo, but with that incentive in mind and the enormous amount of opportunity that it would unlock to make data access like water, I mean, is that a viable hope? Do you see with the connections that you have and the conversations that you're having that we see that in any time in the near future or midterm future?
It's a tough one to answer, but one thing I know for sure is that we shouldn't have a savior complex when it comes to townships and communities and villages. People want a sense of self-respect and dignity, and therefore we should empower them with knowledge on how they can do things for themselves. They will surprise you. They'll surprise you in many ways. You'll find that they already have the solutions just in terms of how they connect. It could be something as simple as a particular stock file, putting together a data package that makes sure that everybody's connected and making sure that everybody else can buy. And they already know how to do these things for themselves, but they're not empowered. So empowering them with the knowledge and the connections that need to happen is a starting point, and also not seeking to monopolize or own those spaces. Then it frees up a whole lot more. And we know healthy spaces, healthy communities that feel safe, they're far more prosperous. And when commerce thrives, that's why even a lot of corporates are trying to get into those communities, but they're forgetting that from a social consciousness perspective, you've got to make sure that these people are taken care of. They're not going to spend money if they don't feel safer as well.
Business, I think one of the things, I've been reading this in multiple books, and I've been chatting with all the interviews we've been having with some of the South Africa's most famous business people. It's just a reminder that there's an age-old wisdom that we seem to continually forget, that business is about service. We need to serve our customers, we serve our clients. And if you forget that, and we do, and it does happen, and you see it across the board, as soon as some level or form of success happens, that you start to just get into this realm of, what's in it for me, how can we optimize profits, how can we avoid risk, and the language changes, right? I'm looking at Louis because I know when we sold our previous company, those are the sorts of conversations we were having, and it was ridiculous. Like, we just couldn't understand that it went from service to all these corporate terms, and it's a dangerous precedent, right? I'm going to ask in the audience, if anyone wants to ask a question, and this is a great opportunity, just put your hand up, and I'll facilitate that. And okay, we have a question over here. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well.
Good evening, Ken Ellens. I'm an IT guy, amongst other things. From previous lives, I was aware of two different initiatives, I suppose is the label I'd put to them. Actually, both of them related to what we now call AB InBev. I think one of their more, if not the most successful campaign they had with Black Label Courts was printing a code underneath the lid. And if you got 5 codes, you submitted it to Vodacom and you got free data. They sold out of the funding in that campaign faster than they'd ever done before. And it talks to your point about actually access to data being such a critical thing. They've also, over the years, run a number of pilots of putting Wi-Fi into taverns, the intent being to understand the consumer better. And in that space, has there been work or ever been aware of anyone tapping into the corporate social responsibility or the other initiatives that they have to enable what you were talking about when you're bringing it from a very different perspective, to make those sort of things more real in the context of bringing different outcomes, supporting their CSI outcomes, not supporting market insight aspirations that they have. And I've got another question I'll add to that afterwards. Does that make sense?
There are rules here. I'm going to rugby tackle you. You can go for it.
All right. I am seeing a lot in the townships, especially in Soweto. So the more affluent townships, or the townships that get the most attention, you are seeing these campaigns going. Like, I think one of the banks, Standard Bank, is doing something right now where they're putting a sign on the wall saying, "Get Wi-Fi here," or they say Wi-Fi wall. So very similar to the quote thing you're speaking about. But I don't know to what end in terms of its impact. And also, I don't know whether it's coming from the corporate social responsibility or from the marketing departments and the play around it. But there are a lot of initiatives of this nature, and especially with below the line digital agencies that are trying to drive traffic into these spaces. So there's activities that are taking place. I just don't know to what extent. There's a township report that came out. I think Louis can share it. I contributed my insights in there from a Stockfast perspective, but there's some things to tap into just in terms of what's happening.
Can I add to that?
Go for it, yeah.
Because I'm still pondering on that idea of the success of the beer bottle and the data. And I wonder, it's a bit problematic. The more you drink, the more data you get. But fundamentally, I think we need to take it out of the CSI. It is a basic human right. And there is two of our members at Workshop 17 were busy rolling out fiber in townships. And I think that should be basic infrastructure to put in. So I think, and it's not expensive, really. It's made expensive. So I think it's a choice. It's a political choice we want to make. And not to do good, but to understand that it's important. We can't live in a society where 65% is not participating. It's just not good business sense.
It's not sustainable, right?
It's not sustainable. So if you even just think business, then your market is reduced. Your security is reduced. So even for the most selfish thinker, you should actually think we're leaving a huge opportunity behind if we don't include the people that are not included at the moment.
Agreed. So I have one question from the online audience. Ola to Fred Bierning. How do we support small businesses, entrepreneurs in townships? And ostensibly, I imagine that would be from a corporate perspective. How would a corporate then support small businesses in townships? In fact, interestingly enough, we just had an amazing interview earlier today with João Barreto, who is from Nestlé, talking about corporate sponsorship and how Nestlé is now apportioning funds from its profits to try and uplift artisanal entrepreneurs, people in the food industry, the food sector, and training and providing all kinds of opportunities. So there seems to be some movement in that space. But I mean, Lebo, from your perspective?
I have such a big challenge with corporates in general because it's very reactive and it annoys me on many fronts. I sell to them. I sell solutions to them to benefit communities. I'm a social entrepreneur. And I see the resistance all the time. It's almost like it's what you were talking about, what's in it for them all the time. So you have to trick them. You have to find different ways of telling them that you must help these people because at the end of the day, when they prosper, they buy your products. And townships are the last mile delivery. In fact, every corporate is trying to get in there. I mean, if you look, whether you're looking at Pick n Pay or any of these guys, they're trying to find ways of, do we do a container? What do we do? Like, we need to find a way to make this product as granular as possible so that this person buys it and we extract money out of the township. Whereas the thinking should be, how do we empower these people? How do we empower these communities? So I feel like we just need to take a step back and take community back and say, how do we empower community leaders and change agents and people who've got potential? How do we make sure that we, as community, as South Africans, forget the title of corporate or large organization because everybody tends to want to own those communities. Let's just forget it, take a step back and say, how do we make sure that we empower ordinary South Africans to do amazing things? And it happens every day. We've seen it, we've proven it over and over. We start stock files all the time where people who are working in corporate organizations and they happen to have a bit of money that they've set aside are willing to fund entrepreneurs in terms of the initiatives that they're doing on the ground, as long as it's coordinated. The thing that we lack is scale. So I think ecosystem leaders and people who have a heart for service, if we come together and we start thinking really around how do we scale such solutions, because they're urgently needed in a lot of communities, and it's not going to come from one or two corporates. Corporates have got to see the benefit that if they do not participate in this, they're going to be left behind, and communities are not going to participate in their offering. And I don't think we're doing that. We're kind of forgetting as people that we hold the power majority of the time. Like, people hold the power because they have the money in their pockets, and there's a rising demand for wanting to be respected. Like, they do not want to be disrespected. I mean, a classical example, it depends on the lens that you're looking this through. When you look at what's happening in Soweto, I live in Roed. I live in a nice area. I hardly ever experience load shedding. And when I look at what happens in Soweto, it's called load reduction, right? Just by default, every day, whether you like it or not, your dignity and the quality of your life is less. Because for 5 hours of your day, you must not have connectivity. And you must trade in that environment. It's not like you must get on a taxi and go and trade somewhere else. You don't have a job elsewhere. You must trade here. You must trade exactly the way you want. You don't have access to electricity. You don't have access to water. There's all sorts of things with service delivery. Just the basic things that must be served, that must serve the community are not there. They don't exist, and nobody cares. And then when people get angry and they start burning streets and they're doing whatever to get attention, we look at them like they're animals. And it is because we've forgotten our humanity in all of this, that if we empower these people, if we empower these communities in the right way, they're the same people who are going to reward the ecosystem. Because once we see people thriving and they can do, all that they're asking for is dignity. If they have self-respect and they can do the basic things and normal things that people are able to do in urban areas, we're going to see change for everybody. They're not necessarily wanting to get out of Soweto and come and invade suburbs. They don't. They actually like where they are. But it looks like a shithole where they are. And that's what needs to change.
Wow. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, just pick up on the point of dignity, and maybe I'm selling my own business here, but the answer to the question that you asked sometimes for companies, I said, don't try to do another program with your name on top of it. Give people access to a community like a Works for 17. Give them a professional work environment. Give them uninterrupted access, not only to physical space, but a beautiful physical space that looks like this, where people feel proud that they can be there, and then access to a community beyond the community they have already. And instead of spending a lot on programs, instead of inviting them to their environment, which has often happened. So you need to come to their headquarters so that the CEO can come down and speak to the lucky ones who can benefit from the good work that the corporate is doing. Meet them where they are. Create a professional environment where they are and see what comes out of it, like Lebo was saying. And for us would be a very cheap way to do that is give them a membership and give them access to a professional work environment, professional community where they can feel part of and grow from.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, it's a continual reminder of our founding principles: inspire and empower. And I think that, I mean, you've validated that massively. Martine?
I'm Martine Schaffer. I'm an independent consultant. For me, we're still talking very much about metropolitan and urban townships. What happens to the people that have got great ideas in Polokwane or Limpopo or Mpumalanga or wherever they may be, that don't have access at all to the data or the space or the people, and all very well having all the stuff on Heavy Chef, but they don't have the data to actually buy it. So how do we engage them and empower them to bring their products or their thoughts or their brilliant ideas to the market? Because they're not short of them. And particularly when you talk about community spaces, that we know that communities have the answers to the community's problems.
big question.
I can answer it because I'm actually working on a project like that. It's called an SMME Rural Development Program. I'm working in 3 provinces. We recruited 1,000 retailers and small producers. As long as they're in the retail space, whether they're in agriculture or whatever, as long as they're doing something, we want to empower you. And it starts with knowledge. So we're offering them new venture creation, training and development, and all of those things. But ultimately, the reason we are doing it is we wanted to create market linkages. So we reversed it. We reverse engineered this thing. We went to corporates who are in the retail space and said, give us shelf space. We don't need your enterprise development budget. We don't care about any of that. We just need these guys to have an opportunity to trade. And then we went to the CETAs and said, you've got skills development budget, but this budget is mostly for people who are employed. But the majority of the demand happens within the SMME space. It's got a lot of self-employed people who are trying to do something, but the system kicks them out. They do not have the requisite education that's required. Some of them, even if they do, they don't even know where their certificates are. They come from villages. So I literally operate in villages on a daily basis. Even coming from Polokwane right now, it's because we're out in Sekhukhune, Tabazimbi, like the areas where there's literally nothing there. But we can bridge this divide. We can bring these communities closer. And it's just about thinking about what is the end goal. I mean, for somebody, for instance, I was in Elukwatini a couple of weeks ago. Elukwatini is in Mpumalanga. There's a huge demand in Malawi for maize meal. We're not talking innovation here. We're not, in urban spaces we talk this big, nice languages. We're talking maize meal. That's all that they need in Malawi. It exists in Limpopo, in Mpumalanga. And our question that we must ask, and I got it from a local, the question is, how do we help this guy get his maize meal that he produces in his farm to the other side? Because he doesn't even have to get across the border. These guys will come to him. But the way that it's facilitated is not as smooth as it can be. And when we see the economic opportunity, all of a sudden a lot of the locals are empowered because there's job creation just by demand for a product that people actually need. So we've got fertile land where people are actually producing all sorts of crops, and we've got a country like Mozambique and Malawi that need these things. And it's like, how do we just make sure that this is smooth sailing? Because they're doing it by themselves. It's very separated. It doesn't operate in a cohesive way. It doesn't ensure that they can actually leverage off what the country's policies offer. There's IDC, there's NEF, there's all sorts of organizations that give you all of these things, and they exist, but people do not know. The people who are doing the actual work don't even get into the system to apply for those resources. So we're trying to bridge that gap, but it starts with addressing the number one need. We're saying, where is the market? Where is the demand for this? And if we understand what the demand is, what needs to be sorted to make sure that these guys can participate in that economy? And we're trying to bridge that gap. And we're constantly appealing and reaching out to more and more retailers, corporates, anybody who's looking for that type of demand. We're saying we have the pipeline, we're developing it, and we'll figure it out as we go as to how this becomes sustainable. But for now, we know that this is an urgent need, because one of the things that happen in rural areas a lot is mining. A lot of them are mining towns. Mines are closing. I was in Virginia last month. The Tiger Brands bakery over there is closing. Other one closed, I forgot the other province, I think. Yeah, it's also in the Free State. Sorry? Yeah, there's 2 bakeries that have closed for this. The one in Virginia employs just over 200 people. These are skilled people who now all of a sudden don't have jobs. And what it does when you look at the ripple effect is that GPV increases, because now the husbands are going back home and there's no jobs, the children can't go to school, all sorts of things. So it increases crime, it increases drug use. There's all sorts of things that are happening in those places. In Elukwatini, there's a mining company that closed down, and a lot of employees don't have jobs anymore. And what it does is that the person who owns a hair salon all of a sudden does not have customers. So when you look at that ripple effect of what happens with all of this, it just takes us a step back to saying, what are the actual problems and how do we help these guys reimagine the future? Can you be an export-driven community where whatever that is being produced here, it's not about people buying here. Maybe it's the next country that needs it, and how do we assist you with that?
To think a little bit bigger. Just a quick apologies to Fred Buening. I just got word from my team that you're not referring to corporate involvement. It's how can I, as a small business, support entrepreneurs in township, i.e. mentorship, coaching, etc. That was Fred just clarifying his question. But there's quite a few of these questions coming through from the online audience. Gillian Lambert as well, also from Cape Town, is asking where can business get access to informal entrepreneurs to collaborate and support with, should there be some form of synergy. So I guess there's a lot of partnership questions, a lot of people out there in the heavy chef community who are looking to partner and collaborate. So I don't know if you want to add to that, if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, so people are overly mentored, under-sponsored. They just need customers, man. Let's start there. Buy from them and build a relationship through transactions. And through this transactional relationship, now you are able to see the gaps and assist this person and say, you're doing this wrong. You could have delivered this thing in a particular way. That's mentorship. But you've got buy-in because there's transactions taking place. I often get a lot of successful entrepreneurs coming to me and saying, hey, I want to mentor these guys. Nobody wants to be mentored. They're hungry. They just need customers. Help them get that, then create the bridges.
That is a great answer. Thank you, Lebo. There's quite a few questions from the online, but is there any more questions here? We've got one question in the back there. Sorry, it's a little bit bright, so go for it.
Hello. My name is Owen, and we're actually a tenant here. So it's not really a question, but I think it's really a public shout out to Workshop 17. So early on, in the conversation, you were talking about creating spaces and bridging suburbs between, let's say, Sandton and Alex. And there's actually a practical initiative that is happening with Workshop 17, where they've been helping us bring in about 60 unemployed young people that come here on a Saturday to be mentored and to be connected to different professionals. So these are unemployed youth between 18 to about 20. And some of them, you'll be surprised, they've never been to Sandton, even though they live in Alex. But what we're seeing is not necessarily just access to space, but I can tell you for the last 3-4 months we've been coming here on Saturdays, we're seeing healing happening in some of these people, and some of the youth. They already come from a traumatic 2 years of COVID, living in a township, and you've got 2 hours of just spending time in a professional space like Workshop 17, and you just heal as one thing, but also hope also is being generated, and I think it is the right thing to generate hope in young people. And thank you, Workshop 17. They've been doing that with us for the last 3 months or so.
Thank you, Paul. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, it can be very short. I can return the thanks to Owen. The only thing we can do is actually give an environment to people like Owen, like Lebo, who understand and make the linkages. And then we provide the space, and as if we can contribute to that healing or to connecting, that's what we can do. It's a very simple, very small role. We put the lights on, we clean the floor, and we put the connectivity. But I do think it's important, and we chose that role for others to play on. And because I'm not from here, it's very clear. My accent gives me away. So we need people that understand it to do it, instead of me coming in trying to do it. And I think if we can provide the environment for that, then I'm happy.
I thought you were from Benoni, no? So we got a question from Kurt Schultz, who I think it's a little bit of a segue, but I think it's important for so many people. We've just again come out of this 2.5 years and just a crazy stick in the spokes of our lives. Kurt's asking, he says, sticking to a routine and collaboration has been my biggest challenge working from home. How do I manage not only myself, but employees and colleagues? And I think there's a bunch of questions that we can cascade downwards from there. But Paul, do you want to have a crack at that? And it's a very salient question at the moment. And I think a lot of small businesses and bigger businesses are asking that at the moment.
Yeah. Look, it's a big question to answer. The shortest answer is most people are able to manage themselves. And I have a friend that runs quite a big company with over 2,000 people. And over COVID, they had a new name for the office. It's called the Naughty Corner. So the people were not able to have discipline at home. They needed to come into the office.
Kurt, you are officially sent to the naughty corner.
But that's a bit on the side. But it's not easy to keep your rhythm because there's so many distractions. There is kids playing, there is homeschooling happening, there is dogs barking.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a new skill. And I think one of the important things is to stay connected. We have lots of online meetings, but they're all functional. We have not a lot of online meetings which are just checking in. How are you today? Are you managing? What do you need? And someone can say, well, I'm stuck. I'm actually not getting myself to get going. We need others also to do that. And my other company is a consulting company. They had every 9 o'clock in the morning, there would be a coffee moment. Not literally, but it was like everyone who wants to join can come online. And the only topic was, how are you? What's happening? What's on your mind? And those little things are, I think, really important, that you feel that you can be non-productive for a day. It happens to all of us, that you need some inspiration, that you need some stimulation. And I think online is one way, but that's also where the physical presence of coming to an environment where other people are working. And I think that's in that sense of the hybrid work environment, your colleagues are not only the people in your own company. If you come to a co-working or shared space, your colleagues are the people who are working there. Those are your co-workers. Take an interest. And the real funny thing is that sometimes people who live in the same neighborhood meet here. And they didn't know that they were living next door from each other. And all of a sudden they find, I have an interesting neighbor. I didn't speak to him before. So that kind of stimulation and new discoveries, that's what you need. And you can't always take it out of yourself. It means something for management. It means something for leaders in organizations. It means something for co-workers, just to reach out, even if it's digital.
Lebo, do you have anything to add to that? Paul nailed it with that. I mean, I think and there's a bunch of questions coming through, and by the way, if anyone wants to ask a question, you have your second one. You will have your chance. I want to ask. No, I'm only kidding. We'll get back to you now. But in terms of maybe the tools, and there's a few questions from the community about tools, but what are the tools that you would recommend for inter-team communication and collaboration? And I imagine we're talking about, technology tools, but does anything come to mind? Anything that stands out? Paul, do you want to give it a crack?
Keep it very simple. WhatsApp is a very, very great tool for us. We celebrate birthdays of each other on WhatsApp. Something that happened in a space, take a picture and share it. It means that you feel part of something bigger. We have more locations, so even before COVID and you're not working at home, just seeing a picture of what's happening with someone else. And the interesting thing in when you're in the COVID time, we used WhatsApp in the same way. And I got to know my colleagues better. I said, but you didn't meet. Because now I see where they're sitting. I see what's behind them. I see the dog or the cat. I see the bookshelf. I see the kind of artwork. I see the kids running around. And it sparks a different conversation. So the simple tools is the WhatsApp and the video call. We use a tool called Zulip. There's Slack. There's other ones, which sparks very simple, quick interactions, and it's really great to stay collaborative. Whatever tool you choose, I think I would warn against too much mail use, but it needs to be direct. It needs to be simple. It needs to be a shared environment where you can see what others are doing, because that's what we're lacking when we're not in the same place. You don't see what others are doing, and that's part of what inspires, but also it's part of where the synergies need to come, but also the connectivity and the breakdowns happen in companies that were very excited about working from home in the first months, and after 3 months the crack starts coming because the informal conversation stopped, and the things that you pick up that are critical to link your project to someone else's project got missing, and that's where a lot of opportunities and inefficiency started to come.
Lebo, do you want to add to that?
Just on the point of WhatsApp, we literally built a Pan-African movement on the back of WhatsApp. because it's borderless, it's very cheap. We built chapters just literally on the go, and it was about connecting the dots with other people who find a particular leader in a particular country, and quickly they mobilize. So I think it's underutilized, and people have fatigue with it because I think sometimes they don't use it for the right reasons. And I think you just need to set a couple of group rules around the do's and don'ts, and everybody must agree to them. It must be democratic in nature, and it must not be dominated by the CEO or the manager or the boss. And then you will see magic, because people love to express themselves, but you just gotta have measures. Sometimes people want to share scriptures all the time, so you've got to kind of pause a bit.
Group rules, people. Yeah, I'm in WhatsApp. Somebody said to me, fish where the fish are, and it's sometimes. At Heavy Chef, we've tried a couple of different things. Way back when we tried Slack, and it's just such a mission. I just don't like Slack. It's so freaking intrusive and noisy. And then you have, we're part of the whole Google Workspace thing, and it's like it just doesn't. It feels like this empty echo chamber. So eventually, everyone was just using WhatsApp, and you can't fight it because that's what they're doing, right? To that point of group rules, I have a WhatsApp group which is called the Cuck Surfers Group, right? And it's basically a bunch of middle-aged white guys, and we don't know how to surf, and we've just started to kind of surf. And Level, I'm going to get you when you come to Cape Town, dude. I'm getting you into the group, my man. But people just don't understand the group rules, right? They're just putting all kinds of other crap on there, and it's like, dude, it's for surfing, and that's it, But, okay, guys, so we've got a question here in the audience, and once again, I'm going to hand over the microphone.
Thanks. I work in a campus that's probably got space for 2,000 people. I'm in the naughty corner. I'm there quite a lot. There's probably 100 of us. It's got a very underused coffee machine. And has there been any work or attempt to make that space available in your context of dignity and using that easily to provide opportunities in the way that you were talking about earlier? I'm sure in Sandton there must be a lot more space than we have. So are you using corporate space to create safe spaces?
So just to contextualize it, I think in the lead up to this event earlier today, a friend of mine who may be watching, Keursten, who works at Alexander Forbes, I invited her to come with her colleagues and whatnot. She was saying, it's a ghost town. She said she's going home early because she wants to be back with her family and whatnot. But she was saying that the whole Alexander Forbes building is empty. Have you seen that freaking building? It is huge, and there's a whole bunch of these. Somebody told me today earlier, I can't remember who it was, that there's 30% occupancy at the moment in Sandton. So I guess the question is there an opportunity for those spaces to be utilized?
Yeah, what you're saying. Yeah, that's a tough one because there's a whole lot of macroeconomic factors that are hitting a lot of small businesses. Cost of fuel, food prices, rentals are going up. There's all sorts of things where people, I think, just coming out to network. This is why I feel like we just need to take a step back as ecosystem builders and be like, what is the one big need that's going to help everybody, that's going to push everybody forward, and how do we make sure that people get it and then create these solutions centered around that. So if we're saying we want to use corporate spaces for such opportunities for networking and stuff, we've got to first speak to the need, because they are not going to come out. It doesn't matter how we nicely package it, and they're just thinking, do you know how much petrol I need to spend just to get into the freeway? And that's the reality.
But I think there's a very valid point in that, because there's a lot of unused space. To Level's point, we need to look at where it is. The hub that we're speaking about in Soweto is opening in Maponya Mall by Africa Tikkun, which is a meeting place in any case. So it's right in the heart of a community. And if we look at malls and retail, it's changing. And there's lots of empty space in malls. There's lots of space behind malls. So if we can give those spaces a new role close to where the people are, and I think that's part of the learning. If you look at Sandton, it's still relatively quiet. Why? Because it's not an area where many people live. So we need to bring we've separated work environments and these functional environments from where people live. And we separated work from life, basically. And I think what we're seeing now, not in all levels, is that we need to bring those things together. Work and living is something that needs to be seamless. You don't want to sit in traffic too long, or you don't have even the money to travel. So can we not bridge those gaps by creating a dispersed work environment closer where people live? We're doing it in our way. We're looking in expanding in areas where we wouldn't look 5 years ago, but it's closer to where people live. Just reducing traffic is already something. Reducing time in traffic takes away from quality of life, but also takes away lots of the cost. And to be very fair, in my privileged position, I can travel, and actually my travel costs are much less of my income than people living in Khayelitsha. They spend so much on travel, so much on data. It's a crime. It's a crime.
Yeah, sure. These are complicated problems. Kurt Schultz says Lebo for president. So you have some voters. So it's time that you throw your hat in the ring. So we have a question over there. There's a mic if you want to grab it. Is this thing on? Well, hang on. Grab this one rather.
So my throat's a bit sore today. That's much better. Thanks, Fred, Lebo, and Paul. Really appreciate it. So I think mine's more of a comment, 2 comments. I have a business, so my name's Dominique. I have a business in education called Bright Sparks, and we're 12, 13 full-time staff. We had an office in Bedford View, and then come COVID, we all went remote, and after, I think a year later, we decided not to renew our lease. Saving 20 grand a month easily can pay for someone's salary. So now we're all working remotely. We're doing training remotely. We're trying to do team building remotely. WhatsApp is our friend, and it's actually going great. But there's this need I'm sensing now where everybody's starting to feel like we just need that interaction face to face. As a business owner, and I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs as well, there's that sense you're starting to feel like I need to just get out. I need to meet people. But it's such an effort. Like I have to get out of my pajamas. I have to drive. It's like something is just the convenience culture of COVID. And we're seeing it we have tutors. We're seeing it with them as well. Nobody wants to do face-to-face tutoring. They want it online. It's just so easy. But yet I think there's this, deep down as an entrepreneur, like you need other people. You need to build your network. Lebo, you mentioned that people don't want mentors, they want customers, but I find that so hard to understand because I think the more you delve into it, there's all those burning questions. I've always felt like I needed a T-shirt saying, who has the answers? Because there's so many questions as an entrepreneur, and you get that from your mentors. You get that from those people you have those, those random conversations with, So my one question was actually about, so if we had to, we've now got staff located all over the country because we don't need an office, but now we want to meet up. What is the best use of that time? If we had to say, find a space and do something together, is it, what have you seen from your experience? Is it better to just have fun and connect, or is it, how do you invest that time? If you're going to get everybody together and invest money as a small business to fly people somewhere, what do you do? What's going to build the culture? I think that's a question I have.
I think that's a very common question, actually. We've had a bunch of people who've asked that same question. Okay, so we have all these distributed teams and workers and so on. When we get together, what do we do?
Yeah. I've been a consultant for like 30 years, and I've done lots of team buildings and programs, and I always used to think you need to prepare and a whole program because there's valuable time. And in the end, I worked whole day with people on just a few questions. And I think when you get together, I would start with the question, how are you? Really? Not I'm great, that's fine. But what is really important for you at the moment? What is a struggle? What is really important? And then I would ask, what is top of mind? What is taking your thinking space? What is really something you want to work on now? What is on your agenda now? And can we help you with that? And if you do that and you facilitate it well, you need to ask quite a few questions to ask the same question 3 times to get to the heart of it. That is the most meaningful encounter that you have, because it's incredibly connecting. Because now you can relate. Now you understand why that person always comes with this question from that angle. So it is really keeping it very simple, but keeping it very honest. So I'll say to you, I don't want to hear the obvious things, but where are you really at? And some people say, well, I'm thinking how long I still stay with this company. Well, let's have that conversation. And it's actually a big relief. It's a big connector, and you get to the essence. So don't make a big program.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
And don't do presentations.
It can be quite awkward because it's like, really, how are you? And then you go like, I'm fine, okay. But the truth is, it's important. Like, I mean, it's one of our founding principles actually at Heavy Chef is also, start with feelings and finish with facts. But you have to start there.
And you have to. It's curiosity that drives learning, and interest, showing a real interest in each other, because that's what someone shows when you ask that question. I'm really interested in how you're really doing.
Rebel, anything to add?
I think on my end, just taking a step back around people not needing mentors. It's not that they don't need mentors. They do. It's about the changing environment and their immediate needs. There's people who thrived through COVID. I'm one of them. I set up new businesses and I thrived, But I also know a lot of people who just crashed because the world around them was so different. And I mentor and coach a lot of entrepreneurs. I work with a couple of organizations around that. And I pick up that because of the uncertainty around them, where you used to be sure that you used to get your income from, that well has dried up. So you don't want to be motivated. You don't want somebody telling you the 5-step guide to this and that. They just want, and I've often noticed that, and that's been my approach, that when I'm engaging a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm like, where are you doing business? Where can I plug you? And because I focus on those needs more and more, I'm able to crack through on the other side and start engaging on the things like, but you're actually doing your business wrong. Have you thought about 1, 2, 3? And then they listen because they're like, this guy is plugging me. If I listen more, there's more that's going to come from this. And it's not really about solving the problems per se, but it's just helping them to rethink certain things. But for me, it starts with trade right now. Because their bank accounts have dried up, their lifestyles have kind of shrunk, and that's what the actual need is right now.
Thank you. I think it's some great perspective. So we have a question over there. Let me give you my mic, seeing as the other one is a little bit faulty. Here you go.
Great, thanks. So I'm James. I'm the founder of QR Space. We do innovative new ways of technology for workplaces. But I'm very interested in more rural areas, how entrepreneurs are turning to software development as a way to overcome lack of resources in those areas. Have you seen an uptick in it? What are the big struggles in that, apart from data, obviously?
I can't even say that exists, if I'm being real. There's programs that come in, but they're not sustainable, and there's no vested interest. But having said that, there are young entrepreneurs who've been focused. I mean, there's one, Langazulu, he's in Richards Bay, and he does robotics and all sorts of stuff. In fact, he's set up a mobile bus where he will get into villages and townships in the KZN area and go and teach young kids in schools and stuff. So I think one of the bigger challenges is infrastructure and access to the internet itself. And just having access to people and, people who have the knowledge or experts who can assist with that type of space. But you now have the developers, but the core things that you need to make that work, just from a connectivity point of view, if they don't exist, it makes it hard to sustain. And let's say you come in with a bunch of guys and you're like, we're going to help these guys. It's also not sustainable. It's cash intensive, unfortunately, and even the traveling or whatever that you're trying to do, because they've got so many issues in rural areas that are not related to running the actual business. Either there's drunkenness at home, there's all of these socioeconomic factors around them that distract them from the actual thing. So, it's a tough one. I don't have enough insight in terms of the rest of the country. I can only speak for the spaces that I've been in.
We've got another, I'll get to you next. We've got one question again from the online audience. It's saying, I get that people want customers, all entrepreneurs want that, but will working with other entrepreneurs not help to get other customers? And I suppose that opens up a question around entrepreneurs working with other entrepreneurs and the value of that. So there's a bunch of questions around that, and maybe you both can share some perspective on entrepreneurs working with other entrepreneurs and the magic that tends to come out of that. That was from Fred. Thanks, Fred. Good name.
Shall I start? Yeah.
It means peace in Danish, by the way, Fred, in case Fred didn't know that.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's about. We have about 3,000 members in Workshop 17 at the moment. And so if you need something or someone or access to a market, there's a big chance that one of the 3,000 can help you. And especially if it's dispersed in different backgrounds, if it's a corporate and a startup, that happens. The other thing that I really am proud of, I don't see a lot of it, because it happens without me being involved. Then someone comes to me and said, I've been now with Workshop 17 and I have 3 clients that I otherwise would have never had. We had a startup in the Maboneng time. It was 4 people and there was Sage coming in with a big event. And 2 months later they had a big account with Sage and they tripled actually in size. Those things are the accidents that we spoke about earlier, but it's linked to what Lebo was saying. If you are in your community and you need a market, you need access to market, but the community can't afford it or is limited or cannot get the scale, that's why crossing those boundaries is so important that I spoke about earlier. Just giving a bigger reach, a bigger market, but even channels, or even someone that can help you bring your idea to a different level so that you can scale up. That's what Workshop 17 hopes to facilitate automatically in our environment.
I mean, for us, we've got a real testimony. We set up the People's Fund within Workshop 17 as a group of collaborators, as in we incubated the business within our business. And it grew from a 5-person team to now over 30 people. It's a 20 million rand a month business, and it's growing exponentially. But it was built on the back of collaboration, because we had the space to do that. Even when we mobilized people in the beginning, when we set up the People's Stock File, which has become a cooperative financial institution, we set it up in Maboneng. And we've got just over 1,500 members popping out 100 rand a month to fund purchase orders of entrepreneurs. These are entrepreneurs funding entrepreneurs, but it's about what vehicle exists. And where did this happen? In a collaborative space, Workshop 17. So there's real-time, real-life examples of these things happening, and there's constant growth. It's not something that you can easily quantify, but entrepreneurs can turn into buyers or collaborators and value creators if the environment allows for it. And also, it just talks to engineering. Like, how do you make sure that you structure as an event organizer or as an ecosystem builder, make sure that you're intentional about building that type of environment and making sure that the networking events that happen, majority of the time, I'll speak for myself, and it's crazy that I'm one of those people who set up networking events across the continent. I'm very shy. I struggle to connect with people. In fact, if I get to an event, this is what used to happen to me at the Heavy Chef events all the time. There's a bunch of white people, it used to happen in Woodmead at Deloitte. It was so cool. I'm like, and once in a while I've been back on my friends and they're like, too many white people. It was so cool, but I would struggle to connect with people in the room because now I must make the effort to go and speak to someone. And sometimes what would often happen is that I speak to one guy and they just monopolize me the whole night because they're just as scared as I am to go and talk to any other person, right? So we need to be very intentional about the spaces that we create. That with this crowd of people here, how do you make sure that everybody's talking to everybody? It's your job as the event organizer to make sure that you're facilitating and you're the dot connector. You can see that this one should be speaking to that one. Make sure that it happens. Make sure you connect them physically, because if you don't do that, it's not going to happen. People just naturally want to stick in their little corner and die with whatever idea that they have within them, and that can change.
Thank you. That's first of all, I'm actually not surprised that you're shy, because I think that is something people who often on stage. It's a strange thing. I mean, we have Rich Mulholland, who's a good friend of ours, and he's one of the greatest public speakers in the country, and he's painfully shy. So there's a lot of that sort of commonality. But I think what's really important is that you have the common purpose, and you mentioned it earlier. When there's that common purpose, when you have something to talk about, when there's something that actually connects you, that's real, that's tangible, that's, it's easy to talk about because it's your passion, then it makes it a lot easier to have that connection. There was a question in the back there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Netemba Chigitela. I'm from Roundabout. I'm actually a representative of a youth desk. Now, I am more of a political person than a business person, I'm sorry to say. However, I would love to first appreciate and thank this moment from E-Workshop 17. The business person in the youth desk is that guy, Louis. He's the brain behind why you're here today. Now, we started the youth desk because as young people, it's very hard to establish something and sustain it and actually succeed on it, based on everything that the gentlemen have spoken in terms of the problems that we face. Now, in the desk, we have people that have businesses, your entrepreneurs. Now, I want to also say I concur with the gentleman when he said to us, we need to formalize the space so that we can meet them halfway, so that they can meet us halfway. For example, there was a workshop that as the entrepreneurs in the desk we attended with the funders, people that have money that would like to fund. So now the main issue that they raised with local SMMEs was that we do not have a profile. We do not register our things. Everything that is done is basically, just there. But there is no paperwork. There is no history. Even though there is a history, but the history is not documented. So now, if you would want to fund me, and I tell you, now I've been operating from 2010. I'm like, okay, show me what has been happening when. We do not have that paper to show that. So the problem is not actually the money itself or the funders. It's what the gentleman has just raised. We, as the local SMMEs, need to formalize our own spaces so that when we go out to approach the corporate world, we already have a foundation whereby they can meet us halfway in. I wanted to say that as a comment. Now my question. All right. My question is that, in local areas, you start this business, it goes, and then it dies. You start there, and it goes, and it dies. Now, the question I'm having now with my other mind is that, should the entrepreneurs within the desk make a business because they're passionate about it, or find what it works and move with it? And I would love to just one more. I'm sorry to comment on what you guys are just talking about right now. The working together. The working together in the economic space, in the social space, in the political space. The working together. It is exactly what is going to make us see change, and then it's going to make me your friend and you my friend, because we're working together. Thank you so much, guys.
Well, somebody please take the mic from the political person. How do you know when somebody's in politics? Thank you for the question, and thank you for warning us beforehand. Over to you, Paul.
So, maybe on the question about should you do what works or should you do what you're passionate about?
It's a good question.
And it's not an either or. But I do believe you should do something that's meaningful. I've seen lots of entrepreneurs saying, so that guy make a lot of money with this way, and it went very quickly, let me do that. You will probably fail, because it's not an easy road. You'll see the outcome, but not all the struggles behind and the matter. So if you're not passionate about something, and it doesn't need to be your hobby, but it can also be, this is a problem I want to really solve, or this is something I really want to achieve, whatever your passion is, that you need to get through the dips, to solve the issues, to become successful, because it's not an easy road. So I would say, as a project, you need to be passionate and you need to be curious. And all the entrepreneurs I spoke, the successful entrepreneurs are not driven because they have the best answers. They're driven by curiosity, because they want to find out how to do better, how to reach that audience, how to make that sale. And if you go into a sale, for instance, whatever product you have, if you're curious about the person that you sell to, the sale will actually happen much easier. And I think curiosity, you can't fake it. If you're not passionate about something, you will not solve the issues because you're not curious enough to find the answers. You will not sell because you're not curious enough about your clients. That's my answer.
Level, you want to add to that?
No, we'll take the whole evening on that one. So
yeah.
But what I can contribute to you guys is, if you're running SME development programs and you need a session, I'm available.
We have one more question at the back there.
Hi. My name is Chindile. We are together. The question I want to ask, do you have maybe a platform where you post that something is going to happen? Because this is the first time we hear about this thing, and this is also our first time we come here.
So thank you for that question. So we do. We have an email that gets sent out that's once a week that tells you about the upcoming events. But there's also, if you go to heavychef.com, and there's a whole list on the events page of all the events coming up for the rest of the year. So heavychef.com, and then it's /events. But if you just go into heavychef.com, you can check it out. And I think that's pretty much time up, guys. I'm going to ask the team for a winner, and so that would be Moabi and Bronwyn, who have been working tirelessly in the background on socials and Twitter and Instagram and on YouTube, just to send me the winner. They are conferring, and we are going to hand out a bottle of this delicious Sydney Back. How was it, by the way? It's pretty good, eh? We had an event, by the way, I've got to tell you, we had an event a few months ago where my friend Shane, who runs, he started Yappy Chef with my other friend Andrew, and they said to me before, Fred, we don't really like brandy. So Shane, he's really quite a specific dude. You know, he took a sip, and on stage, if you go back to the video, you can actually see him do a double take. He's like, wow, this is really good. So I will concur that it's a lot smoother than you'd expect. So shout out to Baxberg and Sydney Back. Okay, so we have a winner, and it is Dominique from Britswell. I'm taking it you guys are together, and I'm seeing who's really going to enjoy the bottle of 1,000 Rand Sydney Back brandy. I just want to honor the two gentlemen on stage, and I'm a huge fan of both of you and for the work that you've done. And Lebo, you've just come such a long way since those early days in amongst a bunch of white guys, and I hope that things have changed somewhat, and I think that you're doing amazing work, sir, and I really just want to honor you and appreciate you, and Paul, just all the accolades that you're receiving at the moment is testimony to you behind the scenes, but also to an amazing team that you've managed to pull together, and I will concur, there's a book by Jim Collins called Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, which has recently come out. I recommend everybody read it. It's basically Jim Collins' life work over 35 years, and the sum total of his wisdom, essentially, of all that time working with Stanford students and research and so on, is basically business comes down to people and values. And I think that both of you tonight are showing that in spades. So can we please give our speakers a warm round of applause? And thank you to the team and the Heavy Chef team who've been working. I'm seeing all the comments coming from online, which is great. Gillian Lambert, we see you. And thank you to you guys for braving, coming out into the wild on date nights and networking and interacting. I just want to do a quick exercise, and the people online can also do this, is just turn to the people next to you, introduce yourselves, say hi. As my last thing, just to say thank you to everybody here, but I want to encourage everybody here, please just turn to the person next to you and say howdy, introduce yourself, and we'll end it on that. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Thank you to everybody online.
Journey. We are all traveling. Gure kwanda kabai koi, here I have been traveling. Life is a journey. We are still traveling. Gure kwandi koi, we are all still traveling. Kanango mayorirana so terera iwe Voda izirango menna so pembera Ubenye udugudu kumwanawe Recollect my friend Kanango mayorirana so terera Kanango mayorirana so terera iwe Voda izirango menna so pembera Ubenye udugudu kumwanawe Recollect my friend, Kanango Mayorira Naso Terera. Life is a journey. Yeah, we are all traveling.